Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Black Psychologist Podcast, presented by the Black Psychologist Network, the Let's Get Perspective edition, where we discuss and react to trending topics making their way across social media. I am one half of your humble and gracious host, Dr. Kyle Osborne. He is I, and I am him. And of course, you all know I'm never flying this aircraft by myself. I'm here with the one and only New Jersey's finest. This guy saves lives left and right, day in and day out. All right, the illustrious Dr. Jason Coleman. What is going on, good brother?
Was good, bro, man. That's quite an introduction. I appreciate it. We flying high over here on this side.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah, y'all doing all right. Y'all,
Yankees
you know,
up,
yeah.
Yankees up 1-0. We can't really complain. Mets won. That's to your detriment, but the city is, the general area is on a baseball high right now. So we good, man. What's up with you?
Man, listen, it's Red October, right? And as you can see, I have to make sure I'm wearing the proper attire. And the only reason why the Mets won is because we want this series to kind of be in like dramatic fashion. You know what I mean? Like it can't be like a sweep because who wants to watch that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a situation. They came to Philly. We let them get one game. We'll take care of the rest. We got to make it more dramatic and theatrical. So that's all that was about. That's it.
All right. Listen,
You
man,
know,
well, it's not a long series because this one's five, right?
yeah, it's five.
Yeah, so it's a race to three. So y'all better get it together in a hurry. Because that one was in Philly, right?
It was in Philly, yeah.
So the first one they would have in City Field with what? It would be
Game
Tuesday or
three.
something like that, right?
Yes, yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that.
All right. We'll see what's up today, man.
Nah,
Good luck and all
look, man, small thing to a giant, bro.
Nah,
In
that's
the
what's up though. It's
in the
good.
meanwhile, we still got football season. Still got
Yeah,
football season. I know we play at one. Y'all play tonight, right?
yeah, we're playing Pittsburgh tonight. I'm not really
Okay.
expecting much, but we'll see, man. I'm gonna ride with the boys and see what happens.
Hey man, at least you guys got your quarterback, man. Our quarterback continues to kind of get injured, man. Listen, he's only had 8 starts within the past 2 years, and out of 8 of those starts, he's got knocked out the game out of 4 of those, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, bad, terrible numbers.
yeah, that's injury prone right there.
Yeah, man.
Now is
Yeah,
that?
so
Oh man, like wow.
yeah,
I 8 starts,
8 starts,
4 times
four
he been
games,
knocked
got
out.
knocked out.
Yo,
Yeah,
was that happening to him in like high school and college or no?
nah, not in college, not really, because he was bigger than everybody else.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
he was just more athletic. So when you do that, you can do that on the high school and collegiate level, but NFL a little different.
I mean, my personal opinion is that, especially when you look at like how they're playing them in some instances and some of these young quarterbacks that they see are athletic. We all see what happened to Robert Griffin III, and um,
Hmm.
of course we see what's happening to Tua and different other quarterbacks that's around now. So, it's interesting just to see, man, because a lot of times the coordinator you have, the system you're in is going to determine, how vulnerable you are in terms of your health. So,
Yeah, and the best ability is availability. You know that, and I know that.
yeah.
So, speaking of Tua, I'm happy you mentioned that because Tua is going to be the topic of discussion. All right, so Tua suffered his third concussion of his NFL career, at least that we know of, right? About 3 weeks ago, like in the middle of September, September 12th, against the Bills. And despite concerns from NFL analysts, other NFL retired vets, fans, Tua himself, on the other hand, has stated that he remains focused on continuing his NFL career. So both the Dolphins and Tua appear to be remain in lockstep about him being their long-term answer at quarterback. So for
Mm.
those that don't know, Tua signed a 4-year, 212 million contract extension this past offseason, which 167 million is guaranteed. That's including a 93 million fully guaranteed at signing, right? So he signed a 93 million signing bonus. So it appears that for both financial and competitive reasons, Tua is pretty much doing everything he can to return to the season. Right. I've heard a lot of or read a lot of reports that he's seeing a whole bunch of specialists and that he's symptom free and that he's trying to do whatever he can to come back this season. Now he can't come back um, until week 7 because they placed him on IR. So when anytime you're placed on IR, you have to be out for at least I think 4 or 5 weeks, I believe. So the earliest that he can even come back is week 7. So Jay, I'm sure that you've been getting this question just like I'm sure, like I know I have been, just kind of given our line of work in our profession regarding Tua's status and like our opinion, whether can he play, should he come back, and so on and so forth. And I know for me, if if he was my client or my patient, um, we would be sitting down doing a cost benefit analysis, right? We would be sitting and exploring the short term and long term risk and benefits, right? Because it's not a situation of can he play? Because I imagine he can still play. He still has his athletic ability and things of that nature, right? I'm sure he can still play at a very high level. It's a matter of should he be playing?
Right.
And I think the question, or I think the issue that comes into play, right? And I think a lot of athletes struggle with this is if he were to step away from the game, I don't think he can see himself stepping away from the game due to everything regarding his identity is wrapped up in football, right? Like you look at it, like football has been something I imagine that this is all he's known since he was young. This has been his love. This has been his go-to, his coping mechanism, all these other different things throughout his life. It's been now his situation, his profession, is feeding his family. His confidence, I'm sure, is derived from football. So is one of the things that I feel like not just him, but a lot of athletes struggle with in regards to even though you're getting injured, it's difficult for you to step away from the game, right? Especially that we know that he's financially secure, at least as it pertains to like this contract.
Yeah, but I think that part, I don't think a lot of people put enough like kind of understanding into that. Like you're talking about people, who work their whole life to get to a certain position. It's also a game that they love. And to be honest, you're talking about a job that's one of 32, right? So it's like we're psychologists, we work very hard to get where we're going. The percentages just don't match up in terms of us them being quarterbacks in the NFL, one of 32. When you look
Mm-hmm.
at how many people start out trying to get that job, right? Um, and how many people we competed with for entrance into a program or all of these things, right? Not saying what we're putting it in a perspective. I'm just saying, right?
Right.
Now your health is important, but you got to consider that from his perspective, right? Um, and that's just we're just talking about. I'm just talking about the satisfaction part. We're not talking about the life changing generationally, financial stability that comes with it in terms of the benefit that you could provide for your family, right? He's already gotten that. The 160 million is guaranteed, but I'm sure in his mind, he's looking at making the 200. Making more money than that, investing it, making more than that, right, for his
Mm-hmm.
family when he's not even here anymore. Now, with that being said, you have a person that has at least 3 concussions, I think, that we know about. And
Right.
what we know about that is that, it's not something to be played with because at the very least, it's going to mess with your brain function or it can, right? And on the lighter end, you might have problems with your processing speed and memory and stuff like that. And then on the more severe end, excuse me, severe, we're talking about like CTE, right? So we're talking about depression, suicidal ideation, progressive dementia, anger problems, anxiety, all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they make the movies about, that they're doing the research about. So all of these things have to be considered when you talk about a person um, who's experienced this many concussions and wants to go back to play football, right? Right, where a sport where you could turn it on right now and there's car crashes going on, on every play. So I just think it's a lot to consider. Now, at the end of the day, I still think he needs to be the one, him and his doctor. His doctor gives him the advice, and then he should be the one to make the decision, right? Um, eh, Again, if we get to a point where he's not a healthy person and he's trying to make a decision to hurt himself further, then somebody else can step in. But as long as the doctor says that he's cleared to play, and we're just talking about risk, even if it's high risk, he should be allowed, in my opinion, to make that, um, decision. So,
Right, because that's not going to be. And I think that's the misconception that people um are falling under, is that whatever specialist that he sees is not going to. I imagine, again, I'm not his his physician, but I imagine all of the specialists, neurologists, whomever that he's seeing aren't going to say that you can't play, right? They're going to say that maybe you, due to the risk, that you shouldn't, right? They're going to tell
yeah,
him that, hey, you know what, because of this is your XY number amount of concussions. And again, it's reported, right? I'm sure anybody that's played football, there's more than likely that somebody to some degree you've experienced a concussion or some type of TBI, right? If you've been playing
right,
football long enough, right? Now, whether that gets reported, different story. But right? We know, I'm sure his clinician is going to come to him and say, hey, look, you're 3 to 6 times more likely to get a concussion based on who you had. And then you got to keep in mind, with each concussion or TBI that he gets, it's a longer recovery, right? So the more you get, the longer more time you need. You spoke about something about like the concussion or like the post concussion symptoms when he's at rest, right? So when you're just like at home and you're not even playing, it's like you said, the depression, it's like the motor function, all these other different things that I'm sure his clinician is going to make him aware of, like, hey, this is where you're at risk for. Yes, you can probably still go back on that field. However, this is the risk that it is. And it's not even getting another major concussion, right? He's also at greater risk for getting hurt with the lower impact hit, right? So even if he falls on his shoulder and his head kind of just like graces the ground or however it is, he's still at risk just because of his
right.
prior history. So that's what's going to happen, right? That's going to be the conversation. Just like the same way how we meet with our patients and our clients, right? We give them the information, they have to make that decision, right? They have to, it's what you do with that. So I don't think they're going to be in a situation unless his head injuries have clearly impacted the manner of how his daily functioning is. Like you said, like he's not able, his motor coordination, all the other different things. They're just going to say, hey, this is what it is. You got to make that decision. And for someone
Yeah.
like this, kind of given, that kind of macho machismo that kind of comes along with that culture and the competitiveness, right? Yeah, it's already showing that more than likely he's gonna try to come back, right? He's gonna do everything in his power. He sees that the Dolphins aren't playing well, letting your team down, to get all these other different variables are gonna come to play. And I imagine, again, I'm not a fortune reader or I'm predicting the future, but he's gonna try everything he can to get back in there. He's gonna run that risk. That's just simply what
Yo,
it comes down to.
I mean, all you can hope is that the person has, the right people around them, right? Because you look at the organization, like I'm sure there's good people there, especially, you're talking about the medical staff and stuff, right? So they should be making decisions that are for the benefit of the patient, right? But then outside of that, right, because they're bound by certain things, right? The law, Hippocratic oath, but outside of that, run one room, right? There has to be a lot of influence and a lot of pressure. I wouldn't be surprised because, the organization has invested 160 million, right? So it's in their best interest that he recovers or, and comes back and plays, right? So you have that. And then again, you would hope that a person has a good immediate family around them, aka mother, father, whatever, spouse, siblings, and also because outside of that, there are going to be a lot of people, business wise, friends, otherwise, that want the financial benefit of you still going out there,
Hmm.
right?
Totally.
So just bringing that up because all of those people are going to have a say and influence and touch that person. So it comes down to, hoping that the person has a good, support system around them, because you want the right people to weigh into that decision, right? Because
No,
we've
you
all
right.
we've all seen what happens years down the line with Junior Seau and all of these people, right? On the more extreme end of concussions and such, where they develop CTE, right? So it's not always going to be the case, but that's the concern, and that's why you see some people saying that he should stop playing now.
Yeah, because there's no finite number for CTE, right? Like it's very individualized in regards to whatever trauma or head trauma that each individual has experienced. I think I remember with Aaron Hernandez, like when I think they analyzed his brain after he had passed, and he fit the criteria for CTE, and he was only what late 20s, early 30s, I think when he
Yeah,
passed. So it's not even a situation always where you see something like the person has to be later in retirement or they're older, and you start to see some of the behavioral symptoms that start to come to fruition or start to present. Here's also been my thing, right? Like, why does it have to be kind of that all or nothing? Like either he retires or he comes back this season. Why not explore like shutting it down for the year and having him come back next year, right? Like I feel like you hope that with the clinicians, with the team, because like you said, there's a lot of parties that have a lot of different things to kind of gain and lose with his decision to continue to play. It's like, hey, if you want your player to be at his best, I don't think it behooves him to kind of come back. It's not going to be conducive in his recovery to come back this year. If he's going to come back, have him rest as much as possible. Come back next year, right? Come back next year. He's still available. And I know the best recovery or your highest prognosis as far as you recovering from a concussion or a TBI is rest, right? That's how it works. So a lot of people have been talking about he's, retire. Cool. I get that sentiment and, totally open to that. At the same time, it could be a situation where, like, hey, you don't have to rush to come back this season. Sometimes, and I know when quarterbacks get injured, sometimes it's a wash of a season, you know? Like, you suffer for a year, get a good draft pick, he comes back healthy. Like that would be the situation if he would have tore his ACL or his Achilles, right?
right.
So why not kind of treat this with the same thing? But I feel like again, the head injuries and the leg injuries, you know, are treated very differently in regards to those things.
I mean, I agree, man. We'll see how this one, plays out, but there's just a lot of, influences. And the thing about the NFL is they say not for long for a reason, right? So, it's easy to say, like, have him rest for his health, but that team may not be the same a year from now, You got players on that team that, they don't want to rebuild for a year. They're going to want to get traded. You got coaches
True.
that may be fired, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is big business, whether they owe him 160 or not. So it'll just be interesting to see how it plays out.
You know what I have a question about? What about those guardian caps? Like you ever see the helmet joints that they wear for training camp?
Yeah.
Or I've seen like you would
No,
think.
some people are wearing them this year.
I would think, right, especially given all of the heat and the attention, because Tua, every time, you have a concussion, but especially with Tua, right? Because of the severity of the injury, and they've always taken place during a primetime game, so it's like everybody's watching. Um, you would think with all the attention that these head injuries continue to get, that they would have made those mandatory, right? Now I get it; they're not the most aesthetically pleasing, right? As far as optics look, they look very strange. At the same time, I was reading some report where I think those the guardian caps as they call them, they could absorb at least like 10% of the force of a hit, right?
For
So
us,
yeah, so if you are that concerned about, because they make them mandatory for training camp, they have to wear them in practice or in training camp. The league has mandated them. So my thing would be, well, why not mandate them during the game, right? Like
I
again, I
mean,
get the aesthetics. Like,
bro,
why
this
wouldn't you know what I mean?
I get it. I mean, it doesn't. It makes sense, but that's opening the door of, like, listen, you got to remember, like, the NFL is not still fully acknowledged, like, the impact of concussions, because we're talking about lawsuits, bro. So like, they're still like, I mean, and this is not me making stuff up. Like the NFL is still, burying research. I'm not making, you know what I mean? That goes against, how they feel related to CTE, So the stuff you're talking about is common sense, but they would have to justify making those changes by acknowledging a whole bunch of stuff they don't want to acknowledge, you know what I mean? So it sounds good, you know what I mean? But it will have to be something that came up through the ranks. It'll have to be mandated in Pop Warner, high school, college, and then they will be like, well, if you're protecting everybody else like this, why not the highest paid athletes? But we're talking about money and billion-dollar corporations, bro. It ain't about nobody what's best. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, it's ruthless, bro. Wow. That's
That's
something
real
else.
though. We're talking
It
about
is.
money and corporations, bro.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Just put it in context. When you think about concussions, put it in context with it's analogous with like the opioid scandal, right? It's that big. In terms of the players, you know what I'm saying? So they didn't care about nobody's health then, they don't care about nobody's health now. It's about vulnerability to, being liable to a lawsuit.
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Yeah, sure.
Speaking of big business, hip hop culture is a big business that has grown over the past 50 years, right? We're 51 years into hip hop. All right. And a question that's been circulating through social media for the past probably about 2 or 3 weeks is or has hip hop done more harm than good for the Black community? All right. So I'm gonna play this clip from our good friend Dr. Umar, very animated character. He was on another podcast where this question came up, and they had some very interesting dialogue. I'm gonna play a couple minutes of it just so it kind of sets up our conversation, and we'll share our thoughts a little bit after. Hold on a second. All right.
Here we go.
Oh, hip hop in 50 years has made sure that Black people now are respected, and that's never gonna happen.
What has it done for the people?
It gave you. You listen to hip hop music and you were inspired at some point, no?
Nigga, I'm leaking.
We're moving goalposts.
It ain't done shit in 50 years for the community.
It
made individuals rich, and that's it.
It then gave jobs to.
I think this is a great topic.
Amazing.
I do think it's a great topic.
But the drug dealer is.
We should have led with this.
Yeah.
We bums.
The
Ain't no
drug dealer
more.
is essential to the Black community in the ghetto. You can't tell me that. Somebody grew up in the hood.
Hip-hop ain't done shit concretely beneficial to the Black community.
That's incorrect.
Fashion. The first thing out of your mouth was fashion.
I gave you fashion and you started yelling over me.
What else?
But then also, then there's technological advancement. Podcasting, for example. Look at all the Black people that now have access to jobs and ways to make money due to that. We're still talking about rap. We're still talking about cinema. We're still talking about these camera operators, these new people coming up with
new real concrete for you.
I just made it concrete.
No, it wasn't. That was all bullshit.
No,
give
what
me
you're about to say.
Give me a relevant institution that hip hop built in any community, anywhere in America in 50 fucking years.
I just told you.
No, you didn't.
I just told you concrete. People that would not have access.
I didn't say individuals. I said an institution.
I said people.
Where's the bank of hip hop for the Black community?
The definition of the word people means not an individual. So I'm telling you, people that now of 50 years ago.
It's a long clip, but I'm letting it go. Erickson, I sent it to you in a minute.
I asked you, what did they do for the community? You can't give me nothing because they ain't done shit.
People from the community can now work in a music industry that there was never going to be a space for them.
What the fuck? That's individualism. That ain't helping us. That's bullshit.
No.
Bull fucking shit.
No.
It's not helping us.
No. What's happening is virtual signaling. That's what's happening. Virtual signaling ain't happening.
Shit. A few people could get jobs. Everybody can say that shit. Elon Musk got a couple Black people on the payroll. That don't mean shit.
Elon Musk didn't come from black. He's not a black person.
My point is, you can get a job from anywhere, whether they black or not.
But now
That's
you're
not
getting a job.
benefit.
Now black
but
people.
You're still talking about individualism, bro. A few people. You've been around for 50 years. The most popular music genre in the world. Billions and billions of dollars. And all you can tell me about is a few people can get jobs? That's bullshit when you look at the cost that the black community has had to pay for hip hop.
No, that's a good point. But
a whole generation, 2-3 generations of black kids growing up thinking the best thing you can do is be a damn gangster.
That's not
true. All right. Let's get some perspective on that. Has hip hop done more harm than good? Jay, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, it's an unanswerable question from the beginning, right? Because just if you look at the conversation they just had, they were both talking about like two different things, right? Like he's talking about the host or whatever is talking about how individuals benefited, right? Basically how they used hip hop, as like a vessel to benefit financially, right? Whether you making an album, whether you went from making an album because the record company gave you a deal, or now, through Spotify, or, when people were posting their stuff on their own pages, and now blowing up through YouTube, right? So he's talking about people making themselves individually wealthy and becoming businesses amongst themselves and creating a way where that's non-traditional in terms of those individuals might have ended up in like the pipeline of prison or on the streets or whatever. He's making a very simple point, which we can all understand. And then on a larger level, he's kind of talking about people we've seen like LL, like Tupac, like Queen Latifah, going to other genres, right? Like Jennifer Hudson, she's not hip hop. You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean. Like the 50 Cents and all the rest of them.
Right.
Right.
That's not what Dr. Umar is talking about, right? It's the difference between, and I'll get right back to it. I'm gonna make it very simple. Is when Charles Barkley was like, I'm not a role model, right? You got people like LeBron James that feel like playing a bat. He has a lot of responsibility to the culture, right? Beyond playing basketball. And then you got John Morant. His only responsibility is his family. Respectfully, he's making money. It's a job, right? And it's a perspective. It depends on the perspective of the person. Dr. Umar is talking about cultural impact. That has nothing to do with enriching yourself financially. It has nothing to do with creating jobs. He's talking about cultural impact. Like, respected or not respected, you cannot like how he's doing it or not, or how he's doing, or appreciate how he's doing it. What Jay-Z's doing is cultural impact, right? He's taking his money and his position and he's leveraging it with certain things that he feels is important, right? What LeBron James is doing is cultural impact, school. What Jalen Rose is doing, cultural impact, school, right? So that is kind of, they're not talking about the same thing. You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily see, I think people conflate these conversations because they take like the product sometimes, right? And what the product could be the artist or the music, right? And because somebody puts out a song that's talking about uplifting Black people or whatever the case may be, they assume that because Young Jeezy puts out My President is Black, right? That all of a sudden he's militant and he's for the people and for the cause and it's a song, respectfully. I'm not trying to be funny, right? But you have, so I don't even want to get too deep with it, but I don't even think they were talking about the same thing. I don't think they were answering the same question. It's a matter of perspective, right? And again, it's easier to look at it with athletes because some of them are gonna look at it like, yo, I get up, Jaylen Brown, right? If you look at his cultural impact, right, outside of basketball, right? You can believe, you can agree or not agree with Kyrie Irving, right? He believes in using his platform to have cultural impact. LeBron James. Then you got a bunch of people that believe that, they go to work, they dribble a basketball, they get their check, and their job is to take care of their family, right?
Mm-hmm.
J.R. Smith is kind of a good example too, because he has given some interviews lately, I think, and I think some of his perspective has changed, about what he was doing when he was in the league, kind of at his height, and some of the things he's doing now, even to have a lot of cultural impact. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think it depends on your perspective, right? And we got to respect everybody's, right? Because there are people like me and you that are going to go to work every day, right? They're going to collect their check and they're going to be like, yo, my job is to nurture my children, right? Make sure they get all of the best experiences they can, pay my taxes, put my family in a position to win, right? It's not to nurture another minority student. And I can't look at them and be like, yo, they're a sellout, because they don't want to do that. It's not their priority. You understand what I'm saying? I went to school at Howard with a whole bunch of people,
And all right, there you go.
No, I was just saying, like, I went to school at Howard with a lot of people that have a lot of different perspectives, right? And of course, a lot of people believe in, the cause, and, they definitely down for it and pulling up the next person and all of those things. And some people believe in, personal financial stability and personal accountability. You know what I mean? And you got to respect both ways. You know what I mean? You got to respect both perspectives. Everybody, some people look at themselves as the example. So you look at me, you see the example of another person, and do it on your own. And others, believe in direct, person to person kind of motivation and contact in that way. But you got to respect both ways.
Yeah, I don't think this is a question that you can just answer either yes or no, right? For the reason that it depends on the lens that you're looking through. With any culture, right? Because hip hop culture is, and I think this also happens where people just kind of restricted just to music or just to fashion. And with any culture, culture is a way of life. Culture is the manner of how you do things. Yeah, dress and music are definitely aspects of that, but culture is in the manner of how you do things in your daily way, how you talk, your vernacular, all these other different ways, what way you carry yourself. And I think, like, just with any culture, there are good aspects of a culture, right? There are aspects of the hip hop culture that have absolutely been, you know, that have been very beneficial for the community of different ethnicities. And I think there are definitely toxic aspects of the hip hop culture. I think it just depends on one, like I think you kind of spoke to it a little bit, like say with J.R. Smith, of where you are in your life and how you're utilizing some of those different resources. Right. It's a way of, yeah, there are absolutely some aspects of our culture that can be utilized in a lot of different ways, right? See, even the manner of, like, say, how we grew up, right? Like you said, we grew up in predominantly Black neighborhoods. We went to HBCUs. We listened to, hip hop music, all the different things. But there's a certain manner of how we carry ourselves, right? As professional as we are, there's still going to be a manner of that cultural influence is going to impact the way that even how we have a discussion with each other or with people that are closely similar to us. I may use that as established and professional as I am. Yeah, absolutely. I utilize um, my experience or my relevance with hip hop culture if I'm in front of an individual that's younger than me, right? If I have an adolescent patient or a younger adult patient, I'm going to utilize my experience with hip hop culture, to connect with that person, right? Because that's going to be a commonality that I can use during our sense of treatment or rapport building or whatever the case may be, right? So that's me utilizing the culture or using hip hop in a beneficial way, right? Now, there are other different, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are absolutely aspects of the hip hop culture that I don't agree with, right? Like we have the aspect of our culture, which I think is getting a little better, but I still feel like it's got a lot of room for improvement, like the homophobia in our culture, right? Like I don't subscribe to that, but that's something that's very big, or that has been historically in our culture. But again, that's just beyond music, fashion, all the other different things. They're connected, but again, it's a way of life. It's kind of the other different aspects of how people were raised in their households, right? Because hip hop has not just stayed in the 80s or the late 70s where it was discovered, it's also evolved with us as people have grown up in age. So I think it's it's one of those things on the lens that you're looking at it, right? Like that's absolutely hip hop has been very beneficial. It's been very helpful. At the same time, there are other different aspects that people have not utilized, right? Or they've utilized it for the detriment of it. And I think that's kind of what gets highlighted more than others, right? When they start to try to say, oh, the gun violence and all the other different things happening in these neighborhoods, that's hip hop, right? So that kind of unfortunately gets highlighted more often than not because they like to associate the music, right? And what we know is that hip hop culture is a reflection of what people are experiencing. If we're talking about music, right? Music is going to be there's positive music, there's hip hop music where you're talking about gangster, trill, there's all
See,
types of things.
I don't necessarily think that they would. That's not that. This is my opinion. I don't think that that's what they was talking about. Like, I don't think they were talking about like lyrics or whether the lyrics are promoting violence or any of that. Like, we've had those conversations till we all blew in the face. I think they were talking about benefits at the end of the day. Like, I think the host was talking about what people have gained from it in terms of like individuals. And he said it. He was talking about jobs, and he was talking about, even when he started talking about fashion, to me, that's the closest he got to what Dr. Umar was talking about, because he started talking about some influence, right? But fashion isn't even necessarily a benefit unless you're talking about when Diddy owned Sean John or like Fubu or something.
Fubu, right.
Right? Because it's not a benefit to anybody that rappers promote Timberland, and then Timberland makes a whole bunch of money and they don't employ anybody from that community. To be honest with you, that example more supports what Dr. Umar was talking about. That's why I said they were talking about different things. He was talking about what individual people benefited from in terms of money. And Dr. Umar was talking about cultural impact. Like, that's different. And I mean it like this, right? I'll give you a prime example. Mm-hmm. When you think of 90s skateboarding culture, right? You think of Tony Hawk, right? If you know something about skateboarding culture in the 90s, right? He was a big name, right? And as a result, what comes from that is video games with his name on it, right? Skateboards with his name on it, all type of skateboarding gear with his name on it. You can take this and apply it to a lot of different types of, I guess, like industries or whatever. To me, what Dr. Umar is talking about is hip hop is in every country all over America, right? You go into, you can go into Old Navy, you got Tupac's face, Biggie's face, everything, right? And if you look at the people who invented it, Black and brown people, right? African Americans and Puerto Ricans, right? In the Bronx, right? In New York City, right? How have they benefited at all? You go back to the Bronx. How have the people in the Bronx benefited in one bit? Now, somebody can educate me, right? Is there a museum there connected to a school, connected to a community center? Do you understand where I'm going with it?
Right.
Where people come to visit and tour and put dollars into the place where people like, the Furious Five and Crazy Legs and all of these people put blood, sweat, and tears into the culture that they now enjoy in Japan and make billions of dollars? Or was it just taken away and watered down and we just let it go for nothing? That's the difference. They ain't arguing about lyrics, bro. They're arguing about the influence of of the culture, which has most arguably been the most dominant and influenced culture anywhere. So that's what they're talking about. Like, we ain't talking about lyrics.
And so that's the aspect of where I feel like, again, it depends on where you're at in the lens. So with Dr. Umar, I think he's right, but then there's an aspect of it that I wish the other host was getting there. Maybe, I don't know, I can't tell. But if you kind of would have more extrapolate on this point where Dr. Umar was saying, that's where hip hop, I feel like we, the individuals that created the culture, that were responsible for, like you said, the people of color, where we need to improve upon. Because for as much as we created in rest, like you said, whether it be the t-shirts, the fashion, all the different aspects, we're not financially benefiting off it, right? It's in all these other different areas, different countries. Unfortunately, a lot of us are not benefiting off of that. If you look at the t-shirts, right? If we're just talking about fashion, if you go to Target or you go to a different country and you see the Snoop Dogg t-shirt, you see the Biggie t-shirt, you see the Pac t-shirt, look what the label is, right? That's not a black owned company that is making money off that t-shirt. Maybe now, hopefully, and I'm just using it as an example. I feel like, unfortunately, just kind of due to lack of literacy, education, financial literacy, I mean, a lot of what hip hop has created in what the impact that it's been in all these other different places, I don't feel like the individuals that are responsible for that are financially benefiting off it. So that's something where we need to get better with. The other part where I will say where that impact is, you have individuals where I feel like the intangibles, and I don't know how this can really be measured, is that you got the people in those communities who are like, hey, there is another different, these are options, right? I've seen people that went and started their own, whether it be their hairline, whether it be clothing line, all these other different things, because you had the Diddy's, you had the Kamora Lees, you had the Russell Simmons, you had all these other different individuals that now, hey, I'm going to go out and try to do that, right? Now, is that quantifiable? I don't know. I don't know if the significance where they can go and say, hey, but I will say that is kind of the hope where hip hop has done some good, where it has from, served as hope, or there are other different chances or vehicles that people can use. But we have to get better financially as far as benefiting off all those other different things.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm just gonna say this. I'm not gonna drag it on too long, but I'll say this. I don't think all the responsibility is on the artist. I don't think, because some of this was baked into the cake.
Right.
You know what I mean? Meaning, like, in my opinion, like, some of this was baked in the cake, meaning, like, the music industry, like, and this is not, it just doesn't start with hip hop artists, but it was, I think for a lot of these artists, it was set up to be kind of like a pyramid scheme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, meaning, like, they're signing bad contracts, and the only way they can profit at the end of the day is to sign somebody else to a bad contract, right?
Right.
So I don't think all of the fault is to them, but I think a lot of what we're talking about and a lot of the conversation we had about today, and I mean, I think we should ask Ashley about it too, because I would like to know her opinion. But I think a lot of the conversation we had about today, it gets off topic very quickly, in my opinion, because when we start talking about what individuals did, again, we're talking about what the host talked about. We're talking about jobs. So anytime you talk about something that Sean John, something that P. Diddy owned, or G Unit sneakers, we're talking about a person, right, that had a job, right, that created a company, right, to create revenue for themselves, which is fine, right? To me, that's way different than LeBron James taking his revenue from basketball and starting a school. Like, that's cultural impact.
Right.
The reason why we can't come up with good examples is because in this aspect, Dr. Umar is correct, right? There's a reason why our best hip hop artists have to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? Because there's no cultural impact. Like,
Right.
I'm not
And
trying
that's
to
what
be
I'm
funny,
saying.
bro.
No, that's what I'm saying. We got to get better with that part, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, if you have a fashion, you have, like, what are you doing as far as, like, you're inspiring people, but how do you incorporate that back into the community, right? Like, are you opening a fashion store? Are you open? That's where we have to get better. That's the literacy part, like
There
where
has never
we can be
been
more
a
beneficial.
long-term vision, right? There's never been a long-term vision. It's always been about individual enrichment, right? And this is where
That's what I mean.
this is what you get after 50 years of individual enrichment, right? You get the people at the beginning of the line who didn't benefit, who are upset now, right? And then you got people at the end of the line who are benefiting and enriching themselves, and everybody's saying, why aren't these people giving back, right? Because it's the culture is people are approaching it like a job, right? And most people are going to look at what Jay-Z's doing and they're going to be like, well, he's a billionaire. That's why he's doing that. I don't have to do that.
And that's what I'm saying. We got to get better with that aspect, right? If we got the information, you got the success, how are we kind of keeping it where other people can also do the same, right? Like, how are we able to connect that? Because it's more individual based. I think it depends on the person.
I'll give you a primary example of cultural impact, right? If you go to countries, right, there are countries where people have never seen Black people, right? Or African Americans or people of color, but they've heard hip hop, right?
Right.
And if they were to see you, they would probably interact and talk to you and treat you in a way that would be insulting to you because they don't know you. You know what I mean? So you might not want a 9-year-old kid that don't know you from a country 9 hours away saying, "What's up, Kyle?" or whatever. Right. You might not want them approaching you like that.
Right.
You understand? Now, the difference now this is just one individual interaction, but where did he get that from? He got that from hip hop, right? That's how hip hop has touched him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that experience with hip hop is going to result in a bad interaction with you, and I'm going to get to my point in a minute. So what Dr. Umar is saying on some aspect is the impact of hip hop is going to be dependent on who you ask. If you ask the parents, what are they going to say? If you ask the teachers, what are they going to say? If you ask the romantic partners, what are they going to say? Is it a good impact? What is the impact it's had on the standards we have for education, right? And self-care and all. So it depends on who you ask, right?
That's what I said. It's always going to be individualized to the person.
All right, now go ask the mothers and the fathers and the partners of the people that went to LeBron James' school and Jalen Rose's school,
right,
and ask them about the culture of basketball. They might tell you they might not even play sports, but they might tell you that they owe their whole life to the culture of basketball. That's cultural impact. That's cultural impact in Cleveland that's going to go on forever. You know what I mean? So that's to me, that's what I mean. And, I don't agree with everything Dr. Umar say, but in this aspect, this is what I think he was talking about. I can't speak for him, but that's why I said they're not talking about the same thing. When you talk about jobs, hip-hop done created thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs. You know what I mean? But the same way there's a difference between being rich and having, being like generationally wealthy.
Wealth. Right.
There's a difference between hip hop being, how can we say this, impactful and culturally impactful for the people that created it. So that's what I think they're arguing about. That's why I said
they were on two different things.
Right. For me and you, like even when me and you and Ashley have this conversation, because we're certain type of thinkers, it's going to be important that we flush out exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it gets convoluted. The conversation gets convoluted depending on who you're talking with, because people are going to be on different wavelengths. Yeah.
And I think their example is like prime example of people talking two different things. I don't even think
different ideas.
I think they were both right, because the host is sitting there like, yo, I'm here because of hip hop.
Because of his experience, like you said, it's based off that his individual experiences. Hip hop has done well for me, so I think it's, you know what I mean, off of financial.
Think about
job
it. That's why he said to Dr. Umar, he said, "You're here because of hip hop, right?" And Dr. Umar laughed at him.
Right.
And there's a reason why Dr. Umar laughed at him, because Dr. Umar, I don't know, but I'm sure his inspiration to go to school and to become a psychologist and do whatever he's doing, I'm sure he was impacted by hip hop, but that's not what drove him to do what he's doing. That's why he laughed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying it's a difference between cultural impact. But remember, we're in a world where we ask our musical artists about politics. That's why he laughed, because he's saying, what reality are we in, bro?
So, it's a good conversation. We'll definitely touch base with Ashley, see what her input is on it, see what her perspective.
I'm interested to hear how she feel about it.
Yeah, Anything else before we get out of here, good brother?
Nah, man, just you know, we good luck on that game today, bro. And
Maybe.
next time we check in, we'll see where we at, man. You know, hopefully my Yankees can pull it out too.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody. Appreciate everybody locking in with us. Enjoy the rest of your week. Wishing everybody good mental health. Jay, till we meet again, good brother.
All right, bro. Later.
All right.
All right.